Hi guys, what is going on? Dylan here. Today we're going to be trying something a little new to the channel and paying attention to the feedback that we get on this video. So make sure if you enjoy this video you leave a like, subscribe if you're not already, and hit the notifications bell so you can be the first to know when new content is up on the channel. What we got for you today is a ranking of each dungeon currently available in Destiny 2. So jumping straight into it, let's start with Prophecy. Released in Season of Arrivals, Prophecy takes you into the unknown realm of the Nine to fight the Taken and eventually Kel Echo. It offers breathtaking visuals and explores one of my favorite mysteries in Destiny 2, the Nine. The main mechanic of this dungeon has you collecting motes of either dark or light and depositing them on plates of the applicable type. A main problem with this dungeon is it does have outdated weapons and perk pools since it's an older dungeon. It doesn't have a master variant to obtain Artifice gear either. That being said, even though this dungeon doesn't have much replayability, this is one of the top dungeons available in Destiny 2, so we're going to be throwing this in the A category. Next on our list we have Duality. Released in Season of the Haunted, here we have our Guardian pairing up with Eris Morn to dive into the mindscape of Callus. In this dungeon we find ourselves hopping in and out of a mirror-like world called Nightmare Realm, and fighting the big bads of this realm simply called Nightmares. Eventually, we navigate our way through this dungeon facing the Empress Keitel. I'm pretty biased with this one as I'm one of the few people who miss and love the Leviathan raid, and this season took us back into the ruin of the Leviathan. The loot offered in this dungeon is some of the best offered in the game. It also has a master option, making this one of the best Artifice farms in the game. There is also the obtainable Heart Shadow exotic. I have very little negative to say about this dungeon, but I still don't think it quite makes the S tier, so we're going to be putting this one in the A category as well, but in front of Prophecy. Grasp of Avarice, Bungie's big fan service in Season of the Lost as a part of the 30th anniversary pack. Here, you'll head into the Cosmodrome to the famous loot cave and make your way through this booby-trapped, pirate-themed dungeon. Here, you'll collect treasure engrams and deposit those engrams into crystals to progress. You'll fight your way through hordes of fallen, eventually making it to the final boss, Captain Avarok. Upon the first playthrough of this dungeon, you'll have some great laughs as you're tricked into death through all the various traps throughout. But unfortunately, it is a one-time thing, as those traps always remain the same, so you very quickly learn the different locations. The loot offered in this dungeon isn't terrible either, as you have weapons like the Matador and the Thousand-Yard Stare. This dungeon also offers a masked variant, making it for yet another great source of Artifice armor. I like this dungeon a lot, but it does fall a little short in comparison to the other dungeons, so this one's going to slide into the B category. Next, let's go back, before Seasons even existed, to an expansion you may know as Forsaken. Back then, this dungeon was only available in a 3-week rotation. It was a weird time back then, I know, but ask your grandparents about it. Here, you head to the Ascendant Room to fight through the Taken and eventually make your way to the final boss duel in Karu. The dungeon is old and in proper need of a revival of some kind. It doesn't feature its own loot pool, as all the loot obtained from this dungeon can also be obtained from the Dreaming City. You do get the Wish Ender from this dungeon, which is a top tier exotic currently in the game, so it does have that going for it. I will say this dungeon is going to rank really low on my list. It offers a very boring color palette and isn't just entirely too dark. I think this dungeon is in major need of a reprisal and its own loot pool, so really not much more to say about this dungeon. It does come in at our lowest category, the D tier. Speaking of dungeons released before Seasons existed, again, ask your grandparents about it, Destiny was weird back then, we have Pit of Heresy. This dungeon was released back during one of the worst expansions to come out for Destiny 2, Shadowkeep. Here, you will slay your way through the Scarlet Keep and make your way to the Hive Champion Zolmok. This dungeon suffered the same fate as the prior dungeon. It does not feature its own loot pool, therefore all armor and weapons obtained can also be obtained from the moon. Now, in contrast to the Shattered Throne, the Hive world is much more palpable and it does offer interesting scenery. This is another dungeon, though, that I think would severely benefit from some kind of reprisal with its own loot pool, but as of now, we have to rank this one low, not Shattered Throne low, so we're going to throw this one in the C tier. Next, we have Spire of the Watcher, released during Season of the Seraph. Here you team up with Osiris and head to Mars to the Ares Spire. You make your way through the Vex, eventually taking down Persis. This dungeon features a cool mechanic where you get to cosplay as an electrician and a cowboy electrician, and you'll kill these Vex Minotaurs getting a buff called Architrician, and with said buff, shooting these nodes connecting wires to power things. The dungeon, unlike the previous two, does feature its own loot pool with some okay-ish weapons, but some really cool looking armor if you're into the whole cowboy theme. You can also obtain the exotic bow hierarchy of needs as well. Personally speaking, I like the Wild West aesthetic of the dungeon, and they definitely kill it with the intro to this dungeon showing that tumbleweed roll by. I think this is a very well thought out dungeon, and it's very cohesive. It has a lot of replayability. I still like Dungeons, Duality, and Prophecy more than Spire, so I would have to throw this one in the B category, but I'm going to throw it in front of Grasp of Avarice, making this our number 3 dungeon. And finally, our most recently released dungeon, Ghost of the Deep. Released during Season of the Deep, you dive deep into the Saturn Ocean to stop the Hive from resurrecting the Taken King Oryx. You'll face a bunch of Hive, collecting vestiges of light and planting them on statues to progress. The big thing with this dungeon is you actually plummet deep into the ocean and have to find pockets of air to extend your air supply. Once you traverse through to the end, you'll come across the coolest boss arena in the entire game. Oryx, the Taken King's corpse, and Simu Unakru attempting to resurrect him via a Hive ghost. You run up, shut it down, and begin the final encounter taking on the Necromancer Wizard. This dungeon is by far the most beautiful in the game with its sheer size comparison and beautiful imagery. From crashed Hive ships to Oryx himself, this dungeon does a really good job of telling a story throughout the dungeon so you can piece together exactly what is happening. On top of that, the loot is amazing as well, with the Cold Comfort being one of the best damaging rockets in the game currently that can roll with Envious Assassin and Bait and Switch, and the No Survivors basically being a solar version of the Immortal. You also get the Navigator Trace Rifle, which isn't the best exotic in the game, but can have some potential with the right builds as well. The only thing I can say negatively, and this is me being nitpicky, is the amount of health some of these dungeon bosses have, which is a lot more than raid bosses even. But even still, I think you know where I'm going to go with this one. That's an easy S tier as our best dungeon in Destiny 2. So there you have it. Let me know in the comments below. Do y'all agree? Do you not? Am I a dum-dum who doesn't know what he's talking about, or am I on the money? I'm interested to hear your takes on what dungeons you all like the most. As always, leave me a like if you enjoyed this content. Be sure to subscribe if you want to see more videos like this in the future, and hit the notification bell as to not miss out on any of the content. Thanks, y'all. Love you. Have a good one.